America is turning her back on Western Europe and walking away. Those weren't quite the words of the new US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, but that was his meaning.
Stark strategic realities prevent the United States of America from being primarily focused on the security of Europe. The United States faces consequential threats to our homeland. We must and we are focusing on security of our own borders. The United States remains committed to the NATO alliance and to the defense partnership with Europe. Full stop. But the United States will no longer tolerate an imbalanced relationship which encourages dependency.
And speaking at a NATO meeting in Brussels today, Hegseth added there would be no US troops involved in peacekeeping in Ukraine, nor would there be any NATO membership for Ukraine as part of any peace deal. Almost at the same time, Donald Trump was having a lengthy and friendly phone call on peace negotiations with Vladimir Putin, and he was invited to Moscow. It all adds up, I think, to one of the most dramatic shifts in American policy since the Second World War. I'm joined now first by the former US ambassador to NATO and Donald Trump's former special representative to Ukraine during his first administration, Kurt Volker. Mr. Volker, welcome to the show. People in Ukraine are absolutely devastated by what they're hearing today. No American backing after any peace deal. They feel let down. They feel, dare I say, betrayed.
Well, I think we have to listen very carefully to what Hegseth said. It was a prepared statement, and I think we have to see how this plays out a little bit. He didn't say that the U.S. was walking away from NATO. In fact, he said we're sticking with NATO, but he said that it's not going to be the primary concern of the United States to have focus on security in Europe. And it's clearly an effort to rebalance, to get Europeans to do more and shift more of the burden of security in Europe to Europe itself, but not the U.S. walking away. As for NATO membership, and you mentioned it in your lead in there, we should not be talking with Vladimir Putin about Ukraine's NATO membership. That's none of his business. And it's something for Ukraine and the Western allies to decide later. Now, the tone of the way this came out from Hegseth is that we're not in favor of it now. The United States is not in favor of it now. That's not really new. That was also the Biden administration's position. What we do need to see is three things: a ceasefire on the ground as soon as possible, deterrence, not a peacekeeping force, but deterrence of future Russian attacks. And as you're getting the emphasis here, the burden sharing, shifting more towards Europe, but not leaving the U.S. out completely.
Well, it's only my opinion, but I think European countries are getting the memo on higher defence spending right at the moment and are going to act appropriately. We'll see, but I think so. The question really, the short-term question, is what happens to Ukraine after some kind of peace deal negotiated between President Trump and President Putin, because there is going to be, a line right across Ukraine, which is going to have to be policed in some way. America will not be there. So therefore, other European Western countries are going to have to fill that gap. But without American air support, without big American promises to defend that country, then the Ukrainians just feel very, very vulnerable. You can see, Ukraine, you can see why they're so nervous tonight.
Oh, absolutely. No, it's understandable. And mostly people are nervous because of the things that have not been clarified. For instance, Hegseth said no U.S. troops on the ground. That's not a surprise. He did not say no U.S. air power. He didn't say anything about air defense. So I think what this is an effort to get the European allies to put forces there and to take the lead with the U.S. in a backup role.
So as somebody, who's been following this for a long time, would you expect Britain to be one of the countries putting troops into some kind of peacekeeping line inside Ukraine after a peace deal?
Again, let's not call it a peacekeeping force because we're not interpositional between two sides here. This is in support of Ukraine and deterring Russian attacks. So it is
a deterrence force.
A deterrence force. And I do think the UK would be one of the countries that would be interested and capable of contributing to such a deterrence force. I think the French would as well. I think some of the Scandinavian countries would. Baltic states, although they're small. I would not even rule out Poland, although there's some issues for Poland as a neighbor with a different history with Ukraine. But nonetheless, I think they might be interested as well. So I could see a substantial European deterrence force training and equipping the Ukrainians and assisting with air defense with the U.S. over the horizon as a backup.
We've been talking all the way through this conversation about conventional weaponry and conventional military. But throughout my lifetime, Western Europe has also been under the American nuclear shield. Do you think that there's any danger or any possibility of that shield being taken away?
No, I don't think so. I think, in fact, one of the things that Vladimir Putin has tried to do is dangle the idea of arms control to see whether that's of any interest to the U.S. in getting into a negotiation. And it's really not. I think President Trump wants to modernize America's nuclear deterrent. And I think his primary focus on nuclear issues now is not Russia, but China's growing nuclear capability. And I think he wants to make sure that we have a robust nuclear deterrent.
Very, very interesting conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Volker. Much appreciated.